Hi, this is Ron Jones from Lean Brace. I'm going to show you a really nice hip mobility move that I learned a few years ago called the Z-sit. And it's particularly helpful for men probably over 40, although a lot of younger men are tight in the hips as well, but the men in particular have benefited a lot from this movement. The ladies as well, but they tend to be a little more mobile in the hips. So the movement in general looks like this. Okay, so if you look at the shape of my legs, it has a Z type of configuration, okay? And so I'm going to walk you through step by step. And first I'm going to regress that all the way back to what's called, by some people, a baby sit. So if you think of babies posing for a photograph, they kind of develop that ability to kind of sit up with really beautiful posture. They'll kind of be seated like this, okay, in a photograph. So my foot is in front of my ankle, and I'm just up here in kind of a seated position. So for a lot of the men, that's pretty tough because they can't get this knee down on the ground. And so ideally, this leg is flat, I'm upright, and I switch. If I can, that goes down. So if you can't do the Z-sit, you can refer back to the baby sit. But to break down the Z-sit, to be able to get this far, sometimes we need to be able to walk through that. So I'll have a person sit down. If they can't sit perfectly straight up, then I'll have them brace themselves with their hand. Now, I'm tighter on one side than the other, so it's easier for me to sit up one way than the other configuration. So it's just something to note, and we all have mileage and we do the best we can. So to get into that other position, if I'm new to this and I'm really tight and restricted, I'm going to walk myself back with my hands and configure into that other position carefully. Now see the angle in my body. So for example, I'm too tight, I can't sit up straight. That's okay, we'll start where you can. And I'm coming back, and I'm using my hands to keep from falling over, and I do the best that I can to get where I can get at this particular moment in time. Okay, so again, I'm using my hands. I'm basically just taking my legs and flipping them from here to here. And then I take the knees pointing this way and I flip them back the other way. Where I like people to eventually go is to be able to sweep through that in sort of a circular motion, just kind of rocking across the sit bones on your hips. So I'm sitting and I'm kind of diving back down. I'm sitting and I sweep through, and I like to add a lean. That's a little bit of a progression. So let's say your low back isn't tight enough to lean forward, then the person can just rock over to the side. No lean, just rock across the sit bones on the back side of the booty. Rock back and forth. So wonderful hip stretch, low back, a little bit of kinesthetic or getting to know your body position in space. It's also very good to know how to maneuver on the floor a little bit. There's some nice combative or defensive elements to that, and I'll say that I'm not a martial artist, and I think in this case that works in my favor because I'm just an everyday average person that knows how to move a little bit on the ground, and hopefully if I had to defend myself I would have a few tools in my back because I can move. So if I can do this, can I do that? And the full movement for me involves sweeping through, circling through, leaning. I sweep and I lean, and I sweep and I lean, and I sweep and I lean. And another little progression I like to do when I come down is explore that a little bit. So I'll kind of move around here like a animal really low on the ground. I'm looking for any tight restricted spots in my hip, and I just want to move around and explore that. And when I feel like it's ready or it's time to go to the other side, I'll do that and switch, and I'll explore. And I'm not using my hands because over time I've developed a little bit of ability to move in this Z-sit pattern. So to break it down from the top, not even doing the Z-sit, can somebody get down the floor in the first place, right? And if they can they get into some sort of like baby sit position? So even if this knee up, even if they're not sitting upright, and even for me it's hard to sit upright with the restrictions I have on my spine. So I do the best that I can, and there's no pain. I'm always doing something to enable myself to lead better. So first rule, of course, do no harm. So can we do this? If so, can we do that? That's where we start. If I can do this, I might be able to do this, even if I'm at an angle. And then I use my hands to walk myself through. And if I can do that, maybe I can just sweep through and not use my hands. No lean yet, I'm just rolling from one side to the other. If I can do that, can I lean and kind of bounce out of that? Can I lean and bounce out of that? If I can do that, can I explore that a little bit? Can I get a little bit lower? Can I go faster? Although speed usually is the last thing to add, but you might have to use that kind of speed of movement or quickness on the ground in some kind of defensive or even sports situation. And ultimately, if we think about self-defense, and again, I'm not a martial artist, but some things I've learned from my friends along the way, can you get up off the ground protecting your head without the use of your hands? Because you might have to do that. So I use this in corporate wellness all the time. We put a little playfulness into the defensive movement. So, for example, can I do this and get up, keep my head up somehow, right? My hands up, protecting my head, just in case, right? And again, that would be, for this kind of movement, maybe a higher end for some people. You don't have to do that. But start where you can. I think it's a great thing to use in worksite health if you have a mat area where the knees are protected with a little bit of softness or some grass. And it's a wonderful movement. I've used it for years. Never had anybody hurt doing it because we break it down to the point where it can be done safely.